Hello everyone, welcome to the day 14 session on Selenium WebDriver training by 5 Elements Learning. Today we are going to talk about the concept of how we can create logs, read and write Excel sheets. We will then be talking about a concept called as Java Reflections, which is mainly used when we will be creating keyword driven framework, and then we will be having a demo of both hybrid and keyword driven framework. So far we have learned about the concepts of Selenium, Java, WebDriver, and now we are learning or going to learn about few more components which help us with the framework creation. Now during the test automation, it is extremely important that we are fetching the logs. Okay, we are fetching the runtime logs and we are writing down a log file which could be used for debugging purposes later. So in here we are capturing all the events, as in how many test cases have passed, when test case execution has started, ended, or if an exception is encountered, etc. Now it is a file which is a runtime file. It's just being written down continuously. Also multiple people are accessing this file and trying to add the content in it. Okay, so logging is not supposed to be left to the individual users to write their own log statements. It is a process which should be generalized so that we can identify a component which helps with login, create the skeleton of it, which could be used by individual developers in their particular class. Now we have log4j component available or jar available from Apache, which allows us to generate these runtime logs. And another purpose which benefits us is that multiple people can write on it and it is a continuously written file. So go on this link to have a look at the Apache. So this is the URL for the component. Now here you will go to the download section to download the jars we may require for being consumed by our project. So download the Apache Log4j binary file, whether on Linux or Windows. Accordingly, download the zip and the tar.gz file. Once you have downloaded the file, extract its content. And when you extract its content, you will find the folder here. For example, in here it contains these files: API 2.5, just this, core and test. These are the 4 files which are supposed to be added to our build path, project build path. These 4 files. So if you look at this particular project properties, we will have to ensure we have the log4j added. For that, we'll be adding the files. Open them, and this is the file which is available. Okay. Now we import the log4j package and the logger class. We create a static object of the logger class. The reason we create a static object of logger class is because every time when we open or when we use this object to write into a file, we do not want new instances or new files to be created. We want it to write the content of the log in the same file. So we create a static object of the logger class, and then we have got these functions like info, warn, error, fatal, inside which the log functions are only called. So we say log.info, log.warn, dot error, dot fatal, etc. Okay, dot debug. Now to use this file, we have another class available. In this particular class, what we are doing is we are configuring the log using log4j.xml, and we are calling all these methods log.info, .debug, .warn, .error along with some strings. Okay, so that the message with this particular characteristic gets logged into the log file. Now, log4j.xml is an important file which basically carries meta information about where and how the different logs would be available, where the logging will be created, how it would be looking like, etc. So we need to get this file. So log4j XML talks that the log file.log will be created. That is the name of the file. The threshold value is info, which we will be used for logging purpose. So let's run this program. just give me some time. Just trying to fix the issue. So in here, the logs are generated depending upon the level of information we are trying to paste. Now, the next concept which we are going to talk about is the concept of reading and writing an Excel file. So to read and write Excel file, what we are going to do is we'll be using the Apache POI package, which allows us to read and write the .xls and the .xlx file. For that we have got some components. So HHSF way of class is used to read the XLS file, whereas .xsf is used to read the .xlsx file. Now we are going to download the stable release of Apache POI, okay, and download according to your operating system details that binary distribution, okay. Once you have the files available, what you need to do is you need to add their libraries into the workspace. So for that, go to your project, add the libraries. So add all these files which are available here. available in this XML lib and available in the last folder, which is lib. So add all these files. So we'll have a look at how does Excel sheet works. So when you look at an Excel object is basically a workbook which contains by default these three worksheets. So you create an Excel object and then you create worksheet associated with this Excel object. Every worksheet will contain rows and columns, and an intersection of a row and a column is called as a cell. It is here at the cell we are performing the read and write operations. So how do you access the Excel sheet cell? You first access the workbook, then the sheet, then the rows and columns. Intersection will give you the cell value which you can use for reading and writing purposes. So in this particular program we have got some methods created. Because we have .xlx file, the objects which will be created of .xsf. So we create XSF workbook, XSF sheet and XSF cell. These are the three objects which we have created. Then we use the method set Excel file. We pass the path and the sheet name. We say file input stream Excel file is equal to new file input stream path. So this talks about the file path which is available to us to work with Excel file. Then we create the Excel workbook object and the worksheet object. So you have got the workbook and you have got the worksheet available. Then we have got a method called as getCellData, which takes two input arguments, row number and column number. It will return the data associated with a single cell. Then we want to set cell data. Now in an Excel sheet, if the cell has not had any value ever, that cell is considered as null. And on null object you cannot write or access, you cannot access a null object. So you cannot read or write anything. So if the object found is null, we first create the cell, then set cell value. Okay. Then once our work of file is done, we call this method of saving the file, which creates a file output stream object and write the content of the file there and saves it. Now here is a program which is going to read and write the content of an Excel file. So we have got a file available called as example.xls. Let me just show it to you guys. This is a file available which contains 2 rows and 4 columns having some information within it, okay? Some data set within it. So what we are going to do is, we create an object of read-write Excel file and we call the method set Excel file and we pass the file path and the sheet. Which sheet do you want to read the data from? Sheet 1. This will create an object of this read-write class file, okay? Then we call this method set cell data, string cell data, where we fetch the cell data associated with 0th row and 0th column. Then we set cell data to the first row and third column and we save the file .example.xls. So if I run this program, it should ideally fetch the information available on 0th row 0th column, which is Selenium framework rightly, and on first row 3rd column it should have said demo for Excel working. So this is Selenium framework, demo for Excel working is set. So at the cell level we basically perform our read and write operations. Is this clear? Any questions? Now we are going to discuss the concept of reflection. Here we create a class file called as keyword library, which contains some wrapper functions over internal Selenium functions. For example, open, which inside uses driver.get, click, which uses the driver.findObject.click method, type, which uses the sendKeys method, close browser, which uses the driver.quit. So we have created our own methods calling internally the methods of Selenium. So we create this object keyword library. Now to find an element, we have to first create the locator information from the element, which is created in this method fetch object. So let's go to this. In this particular method fetch object, we pass the object information in a string format. Based upon the string format provided, the format is to be given as locator type equal to value. So we split on the equal to symbol and we fetch whether the locator type is linked text, name or ID. Based upon which type of locator value is available, we create the by object. So it could be by.linkText or by.id or by.name. Now the concept of reflection says that if I have availability of a class which contains methods, at the time of execution I can call those methods without actually knowing their name. So I may not So if you want to add another keyword, what you will be doing is you will be creating a method and inside it you will be adding another Selenium inbuilt function. Now we were talking about how do we call this method, the reflection method. So in the concept of reflection, what happens is this. If we want to call the methods of a class at the time of execution without actually knowing the method signature. So we are basically not aware of the name, the input arguments, the type of input arguments, etc. But we want to call this method at runtime. How do you call a method? You provide method name followed by bracket input args semicolon, right? So how do you call a method where you do not know the name and you do not know which input arguments it is going to take? For that, you will be using the concept of reflection. So let's have a look at it. So we import the two classes, keyword library and read-write Excel. Now let me show you the Excel sheet created for taking the input for the reflection example. So the name of the file is test cases. Here we have created a test case using the keywords, and it looks like a test case written in Selenium IDE, isn't it? This login logout. You may find it very similar to the scenario as generated in IDE. So this is one way of writing down test cases where the end user need not have to know any Java or Selenium program. They're basically generating these test scenarios, and your engineer has implemented this framework, which is our keyword driven framework, which can read and write, which can read this Excel sheet and use the concept of reflection to call the corresponding Selenium methods. So we have open, navigate, click, type. Finally, we have click on sign in button, click on log off and continue. So we start reading the file. We fetch the action keyword arg1 and arg2. Then we call a method called as execute actions. In the execute actions, what happens is we are basically iterating through this method array, which if you have encountered method 1, 2, 3, 4, and based upon the method has got parameter, total parameter as 0, then you simply say method I.invoke. If the parameter length is 1, you say method dot invoke followed by the reflection object and the arguments. Or if the length is 2, followed by reflection object args1 and arg2. Args1 and arg2 are basically fetched from the Excel sheet, and so is the keyword name. Now the reflection object is created like this. You say ref is equal to new keyword library, and method is an array of all the methods available in this particular class. So you say ref dot get class dot get methods will return to you all methods available inside the keyword library class. Now in the execute action method, we basically read the information from Excel sheet and we try to match where the name will match with that of the method, and accordingly we invoke that method with the required set of arguments. So here you have to ensure that in your open you have passed the Gecko driver information, and then it should ideally work. So it will simply invoke and execute the login logout program. But this time this execution is happening by using reflection and you're using a small template of keyword driven framework. So now we are going to see the demos of hybrid and keyword driven framework, but after a short break of 5 minutes. So let's take a short break of 5 minutes, and after that we will talk about the demo of hybrid and keyword driven framework. Resuming the session, I hope you all are able to see the screen and hear me. Okay, thanks. So, we discussed about frameworks in our last class. So, there were four types of frameworks which are available to us: modular, data driven, hybrid, and keyword. Out of which we have found that the hybrid and keyword driven are one of the most commonly implemented frameworks out there, and hybrid is a combination of both the modular and the data driven framework. So let's have a look at the code. So in the hybrid framework we have got these folder structures. Its architecture is largely derived from the uh, from this diagram, where you have got a particular place where you have data, a location or a keyword function library, and then combining these two you create your test cases. So here in the hybrid framework structure you have got the test data, then you have got test cases, screenshots, page object model, generic functions, and application functions. These are the components of your hybrid framework. Now I'm going to launch each of these component entities one by one. The first is testdata.xls. In this particular file, what we have is name of the test case. Example test cases names are framework 001, 002, 003, 4. And based upon each of these test cases, you have got some input to be passed for this test scenario. For example, this is the user information followed by password followed by browser name. Then you have got for second one, which is a bad password and a bad username. For the third one, where you change profile information, and the final, where you search for a product. So this is about testdata.xls. Then you have availability of, let me delete these snapshots because it will be taking new ones. Then we have availability of generic functions, and here let me talk about first constant.java. This particular file has just constant variables which are created, which contain some row numbers, column numbers, part to screenshots, and part to your workspace. Okay, so part to the Excel sheet and part to the screenshot is available in the constant file along with the name of the columns and their column numbers. The second is Excel utils. It is the same file as we saw when we were working with example of reflection in the read write Excel file. Here also we have write down methods to perform some actions on Excel sheet, which is basically dealing with reading and writing of the contents in the Excel sheet. So those methods are written in here. In the listener and listeners.java, I have implementation of generating custom reports. And also I'm using this reporter.log. It at the time of execution will generate this report and log it into the test-ng reports. Then we have log.java. The purpose of log.java is to log starting of a test case execution, log completion of a test case execution, and on different events. So on one, on information, on error, on fatal, what is that you will be doing, what message will you be logging. Now utils.java has got some functions available in here which we can use more than one. So here you have got web browser with the open web browser. So based upon whether provided text is a Firefox or IE, you will open that particular browser. This information is being passed from the Excel sheet. Then you have got get test case name. You will be using a method called wait for element to be available, verify text on page, and a last take screenshot. So this is about generic functions. Any questions? So we have seen the XLS document, we have cleared the content of screenshot, and we have seen generic functions. Any questions? Then next we have got page object models. Let's see one page object model. We have already worked on page object model. So whatever pages we may come across in our scenario for, let's say, login, logout, search product or change profile, we have captured those pages and created their page object model. So here this is for the log off link in the on the home page, log out link, the text keyword, the text box keyword, the quick find button for searching, etc. Similarly, you have got login page, page object models, where you will be having email address, password, silent button. So these are the page object models available for different pages which we may encounter during execution. Then we have got application function. The purpose of application function is to basically solve the business problem at hand. We may come across some modules at the business level, that means at the application level, which could be repetitive in nature. For example, the login action itself, it is repetitive in a lot of product flows. So we want to create actions or files around those repetitive action classes and write the code in there so that when and as needed it can be called independently to the scenario. So here a method is available called as execute. Here we click on the home page and we say log info. Similarly, we fetch the username information from the Excel sheet. Once it is fetched, we send keys, that is we type the information on the login page text box and log the information. So this is my action. Now let's try to see from where it is all called. Now here is our framework 001, which is the test case. It has got before test and after method, which is the test ng way of writing scenarios. In the before method, we initialize log4j XML and we fetch the test case name. Based upon the test case name available, we fetch the row number belonging to this test case name. Once we have the row number available, we can pass the data associated with this test case to the program. So we fetch the row which contains the test case name 001, and then we basically call the open browser method. We pass the row number so that we know which particular browser to be opened, IE or Firefox, as pass the information on the test data. Similarly, we call this execute action method. If the output returned by this action class is true, we get true, otherwise we'll get false. Similarly, you have got 002, 3, 4 or as many test cases you want to automate. Now to execute this file, you open testng.xml and make your entries here. So you click on the play icon for the execution to start. So here the execution will be completed soon. So this is the search program. So we got the execution completed. Let's have a look at the test output. Here, as you could see these results, one scenario has passed and one scenario has failed and two has passed. And if I refresh this, you will get the screenshots in the screenshot folder. Now, if I want to, let's say, add another scenario in here, where all will I be making changes? If I want to add another test case in here, so yes, I will be making changes at the level of Excel file then. So we'll be adding the entry into the keyword driven framework if it is using any new method. We'll be adding up a row in the test cases, a new test case. We might need a new file and page object model or an application function. So is it comparatively, do you all understand how do we work with hybrid framework? Any questions? Okay. Now, on the similar lines, we have got keyword-driven framework. Let's have a look at the structure of a keyword-driven framework. You have got this config folder, data engine, execution engine, and the utility engine. Let's first set utility. Utility contains two files, one for Excel function handling, where you read and write an Excel sheet, and the log4j, where you basically use it for generation of runtime logs and a common file. Then you have got screenshot folder which is empty. We will come later to driver script, then data engine. Now let me show this Excel sheet to you. It is a nice Excel sheet. So in this Excel sheet, Excel workbook, we have contained some multiple worksheet. This is our first worksheet, test cases, which talks about the different test cases available in the system in one line description and provide them a test case ID, followed by the run mode, whether you want to run this test case or you don't want to run a test case. Then you have got test steps. The first column being test case ID, to which these test steps belong, description, page name, object available within that page, data and result. Okay. Then you have got in settings availability of the different pages, objects available on different pages, on the home page, objects available and some active keywords. So these are the column values created in the settings. So how will we execute it? Using the concept of reflection. So these are the action keywords that is same as the keyword library. So depending upon opening browser IE or Firefox and then saving the navigate, clicking, send keys. Then we have got constant.java where we talk about the different components of the columns and paths to some of the locations which we may access. And finally we have got availability of or.txt file. The or.txt file is where the logical name is given. You have seen this name in the corresponding Excel file. To each of these names, we have basically found out the XPath property associated. So at the time of execution, it will be read from this particular file, which line contains link underscore my account or link underscore continue log off, and based on the information available, we will either based on the information available, we will either run it with XPath or with ID or name. But right now, just for simplification purposes, we are running it with XPath. You can complicate it further and use the different locators also. But when you're doing that, you have to use the another method. The method right now which is created by default assumes that the locator values are in XPath. Then we have got this driver script engine, which basically has got the reflection concept integrated in it. Here you will basically fetch the list of action keywords. Okay, so you create an object of action keyword and you fetch all the methods available in the section keyword class. Then you start reading information from the Excel file. Based upon each of these keywords encounter, whichever particular row it will match, for that row we will be setting the keyword, the page object and the data and executing the action. So for execution purposes, I'll put this into execution. So we have seen the same login logout implemented in at the script level by Selenium WebDriver, in the page object model level, in the level using framework, both hybrid and keyword driven. And tomorrow we will also be covering one another approach which is BDD. So the same login and logout will be covering using the BDD concepts as well. Any questions in here? Anything which is not clear? So what is the benefit, or where will we be using keyword driven framework and where will we be using hybrid framework? Keyword driven framework is generally used in domain specific application where you want active participation of your business user with your manual testers. Okay. And whereas hybrid framework can be used for any application where maybe domain knowledge is not extremely important. So keyword-driven framework facilitates or encourages testers' participation or business analyst participation by telling them that you can actually write and design your code using the actual code where uh, the end users like business analyst or your manual tester may not be able to use a hybrid framework because you require knowledge of Selenium and Java, which is not true for keyword-driven framework. So in keyword-driven framework, the end user gets a nice interface like an Excel sheet, or you can create an interface in a GUI kind of thing and allow them to work on it. Is this clear? Now there are a lot of commercial frameworks available to us on Opki out there. So we have got Autotest, W3QA, Opki, Qualestia, SAP framework. So all these are commercial tools or commercial frameworks available to us over Selenium, and they greatly reduce the effort and the time which would be required to build a framework and maintain it. So sometimes you can take a middle approach and buy the framework, already built framework from one of these organizations. Is this clear? So with that, we have come to the end of this session. Uh, I'll see you guys tomorrow then. Tomorrow we'll be talking about the concept of Jenkins and Maven and BDD, and then we have a last session on your Thursday evening. If in case you have any questions or any concerns over assignment or any of these things, please feel free to let me know. Okay? So thank you so much for your time today. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye everyone.